Cam from Hawaiian Heat, and you're watching WrestleBeards Worldwide.
WrestleBeards, we got all your wrestling gear. WrestleBeards, woo! Hairy man with dirty beards. WrestleBeards Worldwide.
Hi everyone, this is Shrek here again for WrestleBeards Worldwide, and today we have a special podcast with a very special guest. It's one of my oldest mates, and now he's living in Canada, but he's all the way from New Zealand originally. Give it up for Cam Clark. Hi Cam, welcome to the show.
Hi Darren, thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure, mate. It's been a while. I'd say we probably haven't seen each other in person for probably about 5 years, would you say?
At least.
Yeah. There was a little reunion back in New Zealand a couple of years ago, and then before that, we've obviously been both exploring the world and in and out of different countries ourselves, but always remaining in touch. So it's pretty cool to have you on the show.
Yeah, you didn't come to my wedding. I'm still getting over that.
You also didn't come to mine, mate. So, it's all good. It's all good. So, if you don't know, Cam and I actually went to high school back in the day. We are Kashmir High School alumni. And Cam, do you want to tell a little bit about how we know each other and what you're up to these days?
All right. Well, how we know each other. Well, I think we met back in the dark days of what used to be called Form 1, which is now called Year 7, which is grade 6 on the system that I'm working off now. Very international teacher I am. And then we went to the same high school together.
That's right.
Similar friend groups. And then I guess that. And then we talked about wrestling a lot, and then we talked about The Simpsons a lot. That was pretty much all of high school.
We were nerds, basically.
What we did. Do nerds talk about wrestling? I don't know.
I don't know. That's another podcast, I guess.
That's a question for another day. And then because we went to university as well, we were able to still keep in touch. Well, we went to the same university as well.
Of course. Played in the same rugby team.
Played in the same rugby team.
Yeah.
And just kept on from there, I guess.
For sure. And what are you up to these days, Cam?
And me these days, well, I live in Canada. So I did my teacher training. I'm a teacher similar to Darren. Shrek for your viewers. Sorry, viewers or listeners? Or
both? Bit of both.
With both. And then so I did my teacher training in New Zealand, went off to Canada for a year, and then didn't want to leave. Did a bit of teaching in the UK in between, and now I'm married and living in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada.
Life, man. Life moves fast, huh?
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, congrats on the wedding, mate. And was a shame I didn't get out there, but you know how life is some days.
Well, when you're over, when it's an 18-hour flight away, anywhere, it might as well be bloody Mars. You know what I mean?
You're telling me, mate. I know the struggles, but no, it's great to have you here anyway, buddy. So the format of the show will basically work like a then, now, forever. So we'll talk a bit about the past, a bit about the now, and a bit about the potential future of wrestling. So we'll get underway. My first question, well, how exactly did you get into professional wrestling? How did you develop a love for it, and what age were you at the time?
Well, I thought about this. This answer actually has two phases. See, phase 1 was when I was super young, about 7 or 8 years old. And I went to a rural New Zealand primary school. And in rural New Zealand primary schools, you couldn't really watch wrestling, but you could get all of the merchandise. So everyone had wrestling cards. Everyone had wrestling posters. I didn't know anyone who could ever actually get it on TV, though. I have no memories of watching wrestling on television. But it was huge because I believe it was the tail end of the Hulkamania era. And that was such a powerful marketing tool that even though we didn't even have wrestling on TV in New Zealand, Hulkamania was running wild, brother. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, bro. I have the same memory. Like there was no wrestling on, but we seemed to know about all the big stars and names, but we knew nothing about them.
Exactly. And do you remember, and this is one memory I have specifically, do you remember there was a series of, and I'm not going to call them action figures because they weren't action figures. They were dolls, but they were wrestlers in one pose.
Dude, I had two of them.
Yeah, and you wanted it so bad to be an action figure.
Yeah.
Because, and I'll tell you why I remember this, because I had Ravishing Rick Rude, and Ravishing Rick Rude's pose was him with his hands on his hips. you try using that as an action figure.
Dude, I had Bam Bam Bigelow. That was my action figure. And I think it wasn't Hulkamania Hulk, but it was the version of what he played in that movie he starred in as Rip Torn.
You mean No Holds Barred?
No Holds Barred version of Hulk Hogan. I had that
Zeus?
action figure. Exactly.
Zeus, one of the most dominant wrestlers ever to exist.
Rest in peace.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Rest in peace. What is it? Tiny Lister?
And what was your second incarnation of getting into wrestling?
Now, second phase. Now, for a while, we were in a bit of a golden age in New Zealand because we had all of WCW Nitro and all the WCW pay-per-views.
Yeah.
And we had, Raw, and all the WWF pay-per-views, all for free because...
It was amazing.
And it was amazing because we only had 4 channels.
No, I loved it. I know exactly what you're talking about. But the WCW was always on so early in the morning. It was like sometimes on at midnight or 1 a.m. and it was crazy.
Yeah, you would get a pay-per-view starting at 1 a.m. and going through to 4 a.m. And so I really came up in the Attitude Era. And but I remember it was the WCW I saw first. And I was like, oh, yeah, wrestling. I remember this. This is all different, though. Hulk Hogan's a bad guy? And just that moment of realizing that, well, this is all very different. That gentleman has a baseball bat.
No, it was very cool. Well, leading into my next question, like, who were some of the stars you originally started to enjoy watching, and who were your favorites?
Well, first phase, I think has to be Jake the Snake Roberts.
Yes.
Because he's got the coolest name, and he's got the coolest and easiest gimmick. I'm just going to bring a snake out. Fuck it, snake, boom. And then also, I always remember having like what I'll call as a love affair with Hulk Hogan. When I did actually get to watch some wrestling as a kid, which was very few and far between. You know, that age of sort of 7 to 9. Hearing that ring music come out. And like watching the crowd chant USA, USA, and like again being from New Zealand, we don't really do that.
No.
And I remember thinking, and I'm a little bit ashamed of this now. I remember thinking, man, I wish I was American. That's so cool. Yeah, I want to eat my vitamins and say my prayers. What's a vitamin?
Well, let me tell you something, brother. I mean, he was polarizing, wasn't he? And he's also still that way today. Like, people who don't know wrestling still know Hulk Hogan, don't they?
Oh yeah, he transcended the sport, and there's not a lot of wrestlers that do that, and nobody even to this day has transcended it as much as him. Even The Rock. No, I would maintain that Hulk Hogan is still more of a celebrity than The Rock is.
Well, The Rock is more about movies than any sort of connection with wrestling, I guess. But
I'm sorry, are you saying that Hollywood Hulk Hogan is not into the movies?
True.
Have you not seen the masterpiece of Suburban Commando? what about
Was it Santa with muscles?
Mr. Nanny?
Wow.
Have you not seen his filmography? It speaks for itself.
What was that one? It's something in Paradise, Trouble in Paradise, or something like that.
Thunder in Paradise.
Thunder in Paradise.
He was on a boat a lot.
Wow.
And I got one more. I got one more.
Okay.
What is it? Three Ninjas Assault on Mega Mountain.
Wow. That's obviously one of the classics. Can't wait to see what he's going to bring out next.
Except he doesn't have a moustache and he looks really weird.
He does. Well, continuing on, obviously we stated before we ended up at high school together. And that's about the time where this WCW boom was happening on television. We both probably started reconnecting with wrestling then in your second phase, as you stated. I remember my first recollection of wrestling at school was Zion dressing up as Sting and walking around on the field. So I was like, oh, people actually like wrestling. This is not just something I'm watching in my own time secretly. And then
because it's high school, you're like, is this a thing I'm allowed to share with other people?
Exactly. I wasn't the coolest dude by any means. So to tell people, I had my USA hoodie on, and I had like the worst bowl cut known to man. So I think telling people I like wrestling was going to like drop me another rung down the social ladder. But you were a bit cooler than me, Cam, but you still like wrestling. And then I remember another factor in the playground once. I saw you perform a huricanrana on someone, and you were quite a big boy. You've slimmed down a lot now, but you were a lot of a bigger young gentleman back in the day, and performing such a move, like a Rey Mysterio-esque move, I thought it was pretty hard case. Do you want to tell us about that?
Almost like a Vader or a Bam Bam Bigelow going for that moonsault.
Oh, it was classic. Who was that on? Was it on Jesse Burgess or something?
Oh, dude, we've had a discussion around this a while ago because our memories vary a lot. And I'm going to be honest with you, I do not remember.
Wow.
Like, because to be the person doing the huricanrana, you have to be in such a position.
It was
hard for
hard.
A high school teenager, that's a position you're not going to want to get into.
I think it was a setup, and it just looked funny. You were like recording it or something, I think, but it was just ridiculous. Oh well, I won't go into it too much.
I don't remember. However, I will counter your memory that I have no memory of with a different memory that I can tell you about. And that's the time where we made friends with the smallest guy in our year group. And one of the main reasons we made friends with him was so we could do wrestling moves on him. And there was one day where we were doing our thing at morning break, and there was some pretty soft, some soft pile drivers, but you can't really do them properly. So you just kind of sit them down and you do a stunner and you both fall down so that no one gets hit. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to give him a razor's edge. Let's do it. Sorry, outsider edge, since we're in the WCW phase.
Thank you.
So hoisted him up into powerbomb position, on one shoulder, because he's little. I was huge. He was little.
Who was this guy?
I don't know if I should mention his name. What if he's a listener?
I think you should definitely mention the name.
I'll tell you off stream. Off stream.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Hoisted him up, and then got him in that. You know how you got to hoist them by the shoulders?
Yeah, like the Lex Luger style, like.
Yeah, but I screwed it up, and I was under his chin instead. And I was like, in for a penny, in for a pound, slammed him down, and then he cried because it was a stupid.
As you would, that would be horrible.
Yeah, it was poor behavior all around. Poor behavior for me for doing it, and poor behavior for him for agreeing to it.
I think it's fantastic. Well, obviously, our love of professional wrestling continued throughout the high school years, and eventually some youth group came to school and they set up a wrestling ring. I can't remember who they were. It was like Sprayden Youth Group or something like that. And they invited some of us to be performers and put on a lunchtime show. So that was our first dabble into actually being wrestling performers. And I remember the two of us decided to be a tag team. We had no clue of what we should be or who we should be, but we both owned Hawaiian shirts. So I think a throwback to Booker T and Stevie Ray with Harlem Heat. We decided to be Hawaiian Heat, and Hawaiian Heat was born. I remember it was pretty classic. It was just two big guys wearing Hawaiian shirts. I think we still had
it's a timeless gimmick. Like, it's brilliant.
We had on our Cashmere High School shorts, I think, still, but we were Hawaiian Heat. We were the least looking Hawaiian guys ever. But tell us about that. What do you remember of that?
Well, it's funny you should bring this up because I was on the student council that year. Yeah. I was the, as we used to call it, I was the sixth form, which we now call year 11 or grade 10 for North America.
Yeah.
There. I was the representative, and we were talking about things to do to keep people entertained at lunchtime so they wouldn't go off and tag. Pretty much, was pretty much what it was. And so all the go-getters on student council always all go to church because those two things go hand in hand. And so, they had this Sprayton youth group come in who they had a wrestling ring and they would do it as part of their youth group stuff. And so they were like, oh, we could do that. And as with everything, when you're in high school and you don't really care that much, the whole organization was pretty slapdash. I don't remember asking school permission. I certainly don't remember anyone signing off on the destruction that then occurred. And put it this way, you could never do it today. As a teacher.
Can you imagine? I don't even think you could even entertain the idea. It's just ridiculous.
Forms I would have to fill out to even ask my principal to do that would just be not worth it.
Now, just to set the scene, we had this massive courtyard in front of our library, and this ring was set up in the middle of the day during a school day, and no one was even told about it, I don't think, building up to it. It just happened, and then we have a show, and we didn't practice for the show by any means, so that's another story in itself, but it was crazy. So what I remember of the show, one of the preliminary matches that we were involved in, two matches anyway. The first match was some kind of Royal Rumble, which I think was like the Kashmir Rumble or something. And,
and here's the thing. Remember, we went to all this trouble of developing these really deep personas, and then the only other people who were wrestling fans who were aware of it were the Pacific Island boys.
Right.
Who just pretended to be actual WWE wrestlers.
Yeah,
so I think we kind of got our wires crossed. We got our wires crossed, and we needed to maybe not improvise as much as what we did.
I think we were just on another level, Cam. I think we were destined for greater things than the Kashmir Wrestling League. But I do remember the Rumble, and we had a tussle in the Rumble with the referee of the match, Mark, who was in the Rumble for some reason. I don't know why they needed a referee. I think we threw him over the top rope together, and it built a feud of the pay-per-view, which led to a 2-on-1 handicap match. You and myself, Hawaiian Heat, against Mark the referee, which was ridiculous.
We built up some heat in that Royal Rumble. I also remember that because we had decided that this whole thing was pretty stupid anyway, you and me entered the Royal Rumble and then immediately attacked each other, then attacked Mark, then attacked each other again, and both eliminated each other for fun.
That's brilliant. Did we actually go over the top rope? Was it like...
I believe so.
Wow.
Badly.
Now, one thing I do remember, I remember from the 2-on-1 handicap match later in the night, I guess you would say, I gave a famouser. That was my finishing move to Mark. I do recall, made famous by Billy Gunn.
Did we just beat him up? Did we just decide that we were going to win, or did we let him win?
I don't know. I think he might have actually came out on top.
I think we let him win, right? Because the good guy should win.
This could be a potential future podcast. Maybe we get Mark on the show and we have a three-way discussion about that said feud.
I think maybe if your listeners are interested in hearing Mark's side of this tale, then they should hit like or subscribe and leave a comment below.
Exactly. Did we have names as wrestlers? Were we any?
No, we didn't get that far.
No. It was classic anyway, and we've always talked about it since, but it was a pretty hard case. Okay, well,
crowning achievement.
It was. Well, it's our only dabble into the actual art form of professional wrestling, so I'm going to put it on my resume.
Counts.
We'll move on to a bit more of present day. After school, obviously, you and I went our separate ways, but kept in touch. We obviously moved abroad. Firstly, I actually moved up to the North Island for a teaching gig, and I was living in Raglan. And there was news afoot that the WWE were actually going to be touring to New Zealand, which was very exciting. I'd obviously been in contact with you and Mark as two of my better wrestling buddies, and we brought tickets, and it was all go. It was going to be it was in 2006. It was going to be held in Wellington, which was about halfway between both of us, me living in Raglan, you guys still in Christchurch, and we were all good to go. I got a bus down from Raglan, and you guys were going to drive up from Christchurch. Now, the week of the event, there was some kind of crazy weather happening, especially in the upper part of the South Island in Picton, where the ferry that you would need to catch to get to Wellington left from. And they stopped all ferries. And at that time, no one was catching planes because it was quite expensive. So you guys had to actually sack off the trip. Now, do you recall this? Because we had a little chat off screen, and I'll let you tell it. How about that, Cam?
I have no memory. I have no memory of this incident ever occurring. And I emailed Mark, and Mark has no memory of this occurring.
That is classic.
I think you got us mixed up with your other handsome friends.
No, not at all. I think there might have been some mind-altering substances involved in this this cautionary tale. But
I think you had other handsome bearded wrestling friends that were in this position, and you've gotten me mixed up with them in your mind.
Well, I'm afraid not, Cam. It was a massive disappointment to go to the show by myself, because obviously this was the first time that WWE entertained even coming to New Zealand, I think ever, but maybe in some time. They might have come in the early 80s or something like that. It was a hell of a show, but I went alone with two empty seats next to me, which was quite crap.
Did you put your feet up?
No, but I'll run through the card of what was on the night. I've got it right here next to me. So it started off, by the way, it was at Westpac Stadium, the Cape Tin. So it was pretty cool. Yeah. And wrestlers who went along to were at the show performing, stated it was like walking into a gladiators arena. So they were quite amazed by the stadium themselves, which is pretty cool to hear. The matches, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, the match that kicked off the show was for the Cruiserweight Championship. It was Gregory Helms, the champion, defending against Jamie Noble and Kid Cash in a three-way dance. Yeah, it's kind of a who cares match.
I recognize the name Jamie Noble and nothing else.
Exactly. Yeah. Then we had Sho Funaki from Kai and Tai, and he defeated Sylvain from, I think, La Resistance, like a French-themed tag team. Don't know if you remember that.
We were past the faction phase of WWE, right? Like
there were a few floating at the time. There were a few floating at the time. It was kind of a crappy era of wrestling, actually, to be honest.
No Ministry of Darkness. Ministry of Darkness was disbanded by then.
That had gone. That had been and gone at this point. Following that match, there was the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. There was M&M, which was Johnny Nitro and Joey Mercury, and they defeated the team of Paul London and Brian Kendrick. Don't know if you know those guys.
Any of those people.
We'll get into some big names now. So the next match was Road Warrior Animal, and he defeated Matt Hardy in a match, which was pretty cool. What a rush. Then we had Bobby Lashley defeat Finlay.
Lashley was an amazing athlete. Like, if he could actually talk, he would have been champ. Like, I'm just a really tough guy. That's my persona, okay?
Yeah. Then we had the Boogeyman. The Boogeyman's coming to get ya! And he took on Orlando Jordan. That was after JBL, who was that was a faction at the time. He had his cabinet, and Orlando Jordan was part of the cabinet. And he was giving an address where he's like, "Oh, the All Blacks suck. Oh, you guys are all sheep shaggers." And then it led to the Boogeyman coming down and having an impromptu match with Orlando Jordan, who was the first openly gay WWE wrestler. Oh, there's a fact. Not the first gay one, but the first openly gay one.
Definitely not the first gay one. There's a lot of secret gay wrestlers.
Oh, yeah. Then we had a WWE US Championship match with everyone's favorite dad, Chris Benoit, defeating Booker T via the crippler crossface. Which was
how dark do you want this podcast to go? Because we can make it go pretty dark.
We can talk there soon. Then we had Rey Mysterio Jr. take on and defeat Randy Orton, which was pretty cool.
Ooh,
and the main event of the night was the creme de la creme, and that was the Undertaker, which, come on, who doesn't want to see him? And he took on the champion Kurt Angle, who was the world heavyweight champion at the time, and Mark Henry, the world's strongest man, in a three-way dance for the championship. And of course, it was the schmoz that ended in no real result. It was some kind of DQ finish with the Undertaker winning, but he didn't win the title, of course.
Meaning Undertaker was left inside the ring at the end.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was pretty cool, the pyro and all the lighting and so forth, the massive entrance. So I was enthralled by that. But at the same time, I was there by myself, sipping on a Coke, and had two empty seats next to me. So, and you don't even remember.
We should have made some friends.
Of course, I had made mates around, but it wasn't the same, you know. Everyone had their own thing.
Well, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about the weather not letting us take the ferry to the North Island.
I won't even get into the potential discussion around hiring a helicopter. It didn't happen. So moving on, the popularity of that first WWE event was a massive success, and it showed that New Zealanders would come out for such an event. So, and I think because a lot of fans were shut out like yourselves, they came back several more times, starting from the following year in 2007. And Cam, you were lucky enough to go that time. There was no memory loss or anything involved in that moment. And of course, I was along for the ride. I believe we had Mark there, we had Bundy, and we had Sam, I believe.
I believe Sam was with us. Also, Joseph Kuka was with us.
Joseph Kuka, yeah.
Was Bundy with us?
I can't remember, but he is going to be a guest on the podcast coming up, so we will find out. And I remember you didn't live too far away from the stadium, so we had like a few pre-drinks, and we walked to the stadium because it wasn't too far away. It was in the Addington Showgrounds. Can't remember the name of that stadium. Horncastle Arena, I think, or something like that.
It was new, right?
Yeah, at the time.
Yeah.
Might have been Trust Bank Stadium or something like that.
Yeah. I remember the Red Hot Chili Peppers played there, and that was like the first big thing that was there.
Cool.
Whoa, flashback.
Yeah, so the event itself was a house show, of course. It was SmackDown and ECW, which was pretty random. At that time, WWE had rehashed their own ECW incarnation. What do you remember about that night? And after you've said what you remember, I'll actually go through the card and I can rekindle some memories as well.
All right. Well, I'm going to give you the highlights that I remember. So I remember going there, and I remember there was a match between Chavo Guerrero Jr. and the world's greatest dad, Chris Benoit. And so they have their match, and being in New Zealand, we have, for your international listeners, they might not understand the cultural context here, but the chant when you want to denigrate someone is such and such is a wanker. And so Chavo being the heel, he got the old treatment of Chavo's a wanker. Yeah, you get it. And I never forget because then the wrestlers reacted to it, which I loved. I loved that there was this audience interaction. Chavo froze, and he looked like real confused, like, and he looked at Chris Benoit and he's like, and then Chris Benoit was like, yeah, you.
Actually, it wasn't Chris Benoit. It was Kane he was taking on just to.
Really?
Yeah, it was. But
are you sure there wasn't like a last-minute substitution or something?
No, it was definitely Kane. But that did go down. You are correct.
Okay, did Chavo interrupt the match or something?
No, he was fighting Kane. But that stuff did go down with the Chavo's a wanker. Yeah, you are right.
And so then Chavo figured out what wanker meant, or pretended to figure out what wanker meant, and was like, and I just remember thinking, oh, this is so good. This is so good. Now, my highlight though, was the main event Batista versus Undertaker, because that's what I remember.
Actually, it was the Undertaker was teaming up with Batista and Matt Hardy, and they took on a team of Edge, Mark Henry, and MVP. So it was a 3-on-3 match. But
it was the build-up to Batista versus Undertaker at the year's WrestleMania, right? Because I remember at the end, Undertaker was like, and like pointed at Batista after the match.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. Sure. That makes sense. That's not even the best part. The best part of the whole night was Ken Kennedy, or Mr. Kennedy. Or Mr. Anderson, I think, as he's known now in wrestling circles, which is a much more terrible name. So he comes out, and never having experienced what they call cheap heat before, just blew me away. Because the guy comes out, and similar to your story, comes out and he says, he does his whole shtick where the mic's coming down from the roof.
Yep.
You know, Mr. Kennedy.
Yeah.
Like, and the pause was everything. And then he comes out and he literally just starts launching, like, for no reason, just starts walking around the ring, just saying, now I heard a rumor. I don't know if it's true or not. I heard a rumor that the Canterbury Crusaders suck.
That's our rugby team, by the way, from our hometown. That's
the local rugby
don't
team.
Mess with the Crusaders.
Yeah. Boo, boo, boo.
That's
and
funny.
I remember we're all looking at each other just laughing because, like, we know what he's doing, but you're so swept up in it, like the pageantry and the crowd and everything. Like, it, you really separate yourself from, like, your thinking brain a little bit, you know. It's good. and then he follows up with, now I heard a bigger rumor that the All Blacks suck even more. Boo, boo. In fact, I heard New Zealand was just Australia's bitch. Drinks were being thrown. I saw security have to restrain someone. Like, guys, it's not real.
That's classic.
He doesn't actually think the All Blacks suck. He probably just learned what the All Blacks were today. Like,
I think the All Blacks were like on a massive undefeated streak at the time as well, so it didn't matter.
Yeah, well, they usually are. And so the wrestling, I think with wrestling, and this is an observation I've made of wrestling before, it's all about the story and it's all about the pageantry. Like, the actual physical wrestling can sometimes be secondary. Like, that's not something that's going to get you to tune in week after week after week after week, because not all the wrestlers are really that entertaining. Like, there's a lot of them that are really good that do flippy stuff. Like, the guys that do flippy stuff, like, there's some really awesome stuff that you could go and watch that. The rest of it, though, those big tank guys, like,
I think, though, sometimes the wrestling plays second fiddle for me to the actual storylines that are so ridiculous and the characters. Like, sometimes I don't care if that person's an amazing flippy wrestler, because that guy's got a stick horse as a friend. Wow, I want to see that. Throwback to Chavo Guerrero again. By the way, Cam, I've just had a little update to what I said before. They came twice over the period of 2 years, And on one of those cards, Chris Benoit did fight Chavo Guerrero. So you are right. Yeah. And Batista fought Mr. Kennedy on that card as well. So that would be the one with then Undertaker returning and doing the pose down at the end. So it all
he
makes
must
sense.
have come in for the assist or something.
That's right.
Like, I don't want Batista injured at WrestleMania. I want to defeat him man on man.
So that's pretty cool. So did you go to both shows, or do you remember only going to the one?
I went to one.
That's why my memories have also molded into one as well. But they were there for 2 different consecutive years. So that's pretty cool. Well, both times were SmackDown and ECW as well. So there we have it.
We are very old. And the memory is the
getting
first
on.
thing to go. Yeah.
Well, moving along anyway, obviously our days of Hawaiian Heat were kind of behind us, but we sort of still like the lifestyle and the storyline approach of the WWE and pro wrestling. So in our personal lives, a group of us started competing for a trophy, sort of like a title belt, and it would become part of our social circle where this thing called the SHIED, which was actually a broken chair that had been like bashed up at a party that we'd all been at, became this shield, this trophy, and we all wanted a piece of it. So we would all try and compete for it in various different activities, 10-pin bowling, laser tag. I think we had a poker tournament and this and that. And if you won the title, then you had to defend the following time. I think it was every month or every so often. And you defended it under your rules. And it was quite a hard case. It sounds so lame, and in hindsight it is. But it was quite a big deal for us at the time. It actually was a good reason to bring mates together, I guess, for one. And it was fun. And we always had a few drinks while we were doing whatever. And it kept the kind of old Kashmir high school guys sort of kindred for a while. What do you remember of those days?
Well, actually, I remember a specific rule about no alcohol was allowed to be consumed during a SHIED challenge.
Why would we make that rule?
What a stupid rule, right? I think you were trying, I think the word purity was used.
That's terrible.
The purity of the SHIED.
Just to interject, it was called the SHIED because when I was writing, it was christened on Prairie Street, and as I was writing the Prairie Shield, I did each letter from each side trying to work my way in, and I didn't leave any space for the L, so it only said SHIED, and it sounded okay, so we went with it.
Also, I just want to bring up here that I'm terribly embarrassed that you're bringing up the SHIED, as I was a four-time SHIED champion who was unable to retain it on any challenge that he set himself.
I do recall you had one of the best efforts in a table hockey tournament that we had once at
that was my first SHIED victory.
Actually, it wasn't. It was not. You forget your co-SHIED victory in the breakdancing battle.
The controversial co-SHIED era. Oh, very highly controversial.
But it was fun. I believe, mates of ours like James McLaughlin and Winnie and Peter Henry and Dan Henry and even James's dad, Pete McLaughlin, they all got involved at certain stages. John Luxton. It was pretty cool. Mark got in the mix, and Sam Averis, I believe, was a SHIED at one point. It was just fun. Maybe in the future we'll have to find out where that's hiding and dust it off and have another battle.
Who does have that thing? Someone must have it.
I don't have a clue, but let's put a PSA out. Can you please return the SHIED, because we are missing out on it. We need to have our 20-year annual breakdancing battle.
Put it on Facebook right now. Hashtag it SHIED reunion.
We have to have it happen. Once all this
make a TikTok.
Global bastard right pandemic's over, we'll have to get that on.
I'm telling you, all the kids are on TikTok.
I think that's back in the backlog with other such reunions as Hawaiian Heat and Dialysis.
Oh, don't even start. Again, don't even bring those up. That's a story for another podcast.
Exactly. Well, moving along, now we're into kind of the forever stage of the podcast. So we're a bit older, a bit wiser, both married, both living abroad with careers and so forth. Tell us, Cam, are you still into professional wrestling? And if so, or if not, tell us why.
All right. Well, every now and then I dip my toes into professional wrestling, but I'm not into it as much. And I'll tell you why. Wrestling got soft. And I've actually read a few articles on this. I came in at the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
And what wrestling has become is just so teddy bear now. It's ridiculous. And I still remember the moment where I was like, oh, I'm not watching wrestling anymore. And it was the first time I saw John Cena. Now, John Cena, fantastic guy in real life, seems like a real cool guy. Like, actually does seem like a real cool guy. But like as a wrestling character, so boring.
Yeah.
I'm a rapper, but because I'm rapping on the loudspeaker, I have to rap real low, slow, and I also have to wait for the crowd to finish saying what. And like,
for the record, he's actually not even a bad rapper when he does his real rapping. But yeah, it was dismal at best, for sure.
Oh, it was just awful. And the crowds lapped it up like the kids. Wrestling became for the kids.
Yeah.
And I've read a few things on it, and they say it's because of the rise of MMA. So a lot of people who liked violent wrestling, they migrated over to MMA. And so they had to pivot in the WWE to a more kid-friendly kind of version. But like the guys are boring. Like the big names, like out of all the big names that you could mention, what is it? The only one who I ever felt any connection with was Daniel Bryant.
Yeah. Yes.
And then
yes.
And you want to know why? Because it was spontaneous. Like he wasn't meant to be a superstar.
No.
But the crowd just embraced him. And what do they call it? Got him over. But Vince didn't want any part of it at all. Just like, no.
It had to obviously, of course, have something to do with that epic beard that he had as well.
Yeah. And so I think just with with wrestling becoming more vanilla, that's when I switched off. Like another example would be the death of ECW.
Yeah.
Like if you watch that final ECW pay-per-view they did, holy shit. Like literally the crowd is chanting holy shit.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that at all these days when you watch wrestling?
Not at all. ECW was awesome. And I would love to have gone. I think it was called the Hammerstein Ballroom, where it was such an intimate kind of, they were throwing stuff into the ring, weapons, and it was crazy. And that guy, New Jack, he was like a crazy killer. And I
watched a documentary on him.
Dark Side of the
have we watched the same documentary?
Yeah, for sure. It's crazy. Yeah. Okay, well, that's good to hear that you do dip your toes in from time to time anyway. Hopefully the industry changes a little bit. Has got a little bit more grittier in more recent times, I will say.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, they have. The last pay-per-view that was just on Monday was a TLC themed pay-per-view, tables, ladders, and chairs. And the main event had the Fiend Bray Wyatt. I don't know if you know about him, but he's this kind of otherworldly character, similar to an Undertaker, but in a different kind of level. He wears a clown mask. He's kind of a split personality kind of character. And he took on Randy Orton in a Firefly Inferno match, fire all around the ring. And he ended up getting set on fire and had gasoline poured all over him. And literally there was a murder that took place in the ring. It was crazy. I challenge you to
murder in the WWE.
Go back and watch that, Cam. It's intense. And
The Undertaker's been murdered like 5 times.
Well, this is murdering Bray Wyatt, but it's intense. Well, on that same note, I'm just going to quick rapid fire shoot some questions at you about the current era of wrestling. And I want to see if you, and give me an answer regardless for each one. And I want to see how many you actually get right. And we'll see how much of a current day wrestling fan you are. How far those toes are dipped in. For starters, we're going to talk WWE primarily. How many title belts actively do you think are on the line at this present time in the WWE? And can you name those belts?
Jesus, that's a good question. Okay, so you're going to have the main one, which is going to be the World Heavyweight Championship. Okay, so I'm going to say that that's the main one. Now, are they split brands right now or anything like that? Is there?
I can't tell you, but I will tell you afterwards.
Okay, I'm going to say that there's no split brand right now. So that means it's going to be World Heavyweight Championship, Intercontinental Championship, Tag Team Championships, Divas Championship. It can't just be two. It can't just be the four, though. Unless there's a split, and then there's also the other ones. Okay, I'll just go with the four that I said.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to let you know that there's 19 different titles in the WWE at this current time.
What?
I know. There's actually 4 brands. So there's Raw, SmackDown, then we have NXT and WWE UK. I don't know if you know about that. So there's 4 different brands. Now on Raw, we have the Universal title, which is their main title. We have the US Championship, formerly from WCW. We have the Raw Tag Team Championships, and we have the Raw Women's Champion. Then on SmackDown, we have the WWE World Heavyweight title.
Yep.
There it is there.
Okay.
We have the, that's flicked over actually. That one's on Raw. The Universal's on SmackDown, but the other two.
So even though it's not Universal, they call it the Universal Championship.
I know, right? Then they've got SmackDown have got the Intercontinental title. They've got their own set of tag titles and women's titles. And then there are a co-brand set of women's tag team titles.
There's women's tag team titles now.
There's a 24/7 title, similar to the hardcore title of the Attitude Era, which can be defended at any time throughout the day, anywhere, anytime.
Does that work? Someone just shows up and says, "I'm challenging you. You have to fight me right now," or is it literally I can just run at you and pin you?
Exactly, as long as you've got a referee, which is quite ridiculous. Then NXT have their own heavyweight champion, the NXT champion. They've got the North American champion. They've got their own women's champ and their own tag team titles. Plus, they've got the Cruiserweight Championship on that brand. And then the NXT UK have their own champion, plus their own tag champs, their own women's champ. So it's a lot to handle. And, it's nearly everyone with a title belt. That's why I've got one. I'm actually a champion in the WWE because there's so many champions.
I'm the Cook Islands heavyweight champion. Cook wasn't important enough to be the New Zealand heavyweight champion. That's another fan.
Right.
I'm the Cook Islands champion.
But there is a lot. Okay, moving along. So that's a fail on your first question. To just go back to that, it is a brand split, of course, at the moment.
Yeah.
They do flip back and forth from time to time, but there is a brand split.
It's interesting how different championships change brands as well.
Exactly.
Like, because the Intercontinental was always for Raw, and now that's switched over. So that's interesting.
Exactly. Okay, well, the biggest title in the business is the WWE Championship, the one behind me. Who is the current champion?
Oh, God. Is it someone I know?
I don't know. They were probably around.
Who's still wrestling? Randy Orton.
No, he was the last one though, so not too far off. It's Drew McIntyre. Do you remember Drew McIntyre? No. He was, featured probably back when you were watching, but he was just an upstart newcomer, and now he's worked his way to the upper ranks. He's obviously Scottish, and it's pretty cool. He's actually quite a good star. Okay, on the other brand, you didn't even know this title existed, but the Universal Champion, who do you think that one is?
I don't know.
This is evenly weighted with the WWE Championship, by the way.
Old or young?
Can't tell you that one.
I don't know. The Miz?
No, but he has had the Money in the Bank briefcase recently. He's still in there. But it was Roman Reigns. I don't know if you know who the Roman Reigns.
I know his name. Yeah,
the big dog.
He's the golden boy right now.
That's right. So he's the champ. He's doing some awesome stuff. He's a heel. He has Paul Heyman at his side now, old ECW owner, Paul Heyman. And,
how to make your wrestler a heel. Get him Paul Heyman as a manager.
Exactly. But Roman Reigns is the hot property at the moment. Okay, this is traditional, so hopefully you remember. What is the first pay-per-view of 2021 going to be?
Well, traditionally, the first pay-per-view is the Royal Rumble.
Boom! He's still got
it.
Royal Rumble being my favorite pay-per-view, by the way. I don't even know if they call them pay-per-views, actually. It supersedes the WrestleMania, in my opinion. It's just awesome. I love the over-the-top battle royal. And obviously, we've had our own one, so we've got some history with that match ourselves as Hawaiian Heat. Okay, so that's 1 out of 4. Well done there, Cam. Our fifth and last question is a non-WWE one. The newest kind of show, entity in wrestling is known as AEW. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. What do you think AEW stands for? What's it abbreviated?
Well, the W has to be wanker.
Chavo.
Okay. AEW. Okay, so wrestling, obviously. The E. Is the E extreme?
No. Sorry.
Okay. Is the E like a dream, like Eastern?
No.
No. It's not something stupid like Atlanta event wrestling. No, what is it?
Wow. It's All Elite Wrestling.
Never heard of it.
Well, you need to check it out, actually. It's the next big thing coming out of the wrestling world. It's a lot of former big stars, really, sort of, who didn't want to be involved in the BS of WWE. So it's kind of like, it has Cody Rhodes, Dusty Rhodes' son. It has Chris Jericho. Recently, Sting returned, and he's part of AEW. Sting! And it's also, what's the commentator's name from WCW who, oh my God, it's Sting! Shivani.
Shivani. Mike Shivani.
Whatever. He's the guy who's the commentator. And it's got Jim Ross as well.
Wait, Jim Ross and him? That's
awesome.
Oh my God, he's dead. He's dead.
Stone Cold! It's pretty cool. So check it out if you want to see something new as well. And it's quite gritty, has a real WCW feel. It's looks like it's almost filmed at that old arena, but it's not. And it's in the dark more, you know what I mean, by WCW standards. It's owned by Tony Khan, who's a billionaire, and his father, I can't remember his name, another billionaire. And they're doing great things, and they're taking on Vince McMahon. So check it out.
Good for them.
Okay, well, moving along, you did say earlier you're now living in Canada, and specifically you're living in Winnipeg, I believe. Winnipeg is synonymous in the wrestling world as a birthplace of some big names. We've got Rowdy Roddy Piper, comes from there. Chris Jericho from AEW, he's from Winnipeg. And Kenny Omega, I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but he's another big star in AEW. Is there much talk of wrestling in Canada, in Winnipeg?
Yeah, there is. Like we actually have our own local wrestling, wrestling events. They're not running right now, obviously, with the pandemic. But it's your typical neighborhood guys wearing their underwear going out to wrestle, which is pretty cool. And when I have the odd wrestling conversation, Chris Jericho is always brought up because if you're from Winnipeg, you're legally obligated to tell people, the famous people from Winnipeg, a bit like New Zealand. Whenever you see a New Zealand actor in an American show, you're legally obligated to tell everyone that person's from New Zealand.
Cook me some eggs, woman!
It's not always Timuera Morrison. It usually is. But and yes, every time wrestling comes up, someone will invariably bring up that just Chris Jericho is from Winnipeg, and then they also bring up his band. His band, yeah.
Fozzy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you've got your new home, obviously the home of Chris Jericho, but your old country, home of the Bushwhackers.
They were so culturally insensitive. If you go back and watch some of their stuff, I remember one clip clearly where it said, "And now from Auckland, Australia, the Bushwhackers."
Wow.
And I remember they would come out and they would do this thing when they would go, Tiki, and they would lick people's faces. And it was meant to be like first of all, I think it was meant to be a hongi, but they got the word wrong. And they got what you're supposed to do wrong.
Wow. Okay, well, that is awesome to hear that wrestling's still alive and kicking in Canada, especially around Winnipeg. And Chris Jericho is one of my favorites, so I'm sure they'll put a statue of him in the city someday. One
more thing as well. You may have heard that when Bret Hart, when he was close to retirement, he purchased a minor league hockey team.
Oh yeah,
and he called them the I think it's the something Hitmen.
Oh really?
It might be the Calgary Hitmen. They still exist. They still play.
Wow.
And they still have the pink and black. Yeah,
that's cool.
They're still around. Yeah.
I don't think we want to see Hart in the ring anytime soon. I think he had like 2 strokes or something, but one of the greatest. Yeah. Okay, moving along. You were one of the guys who grew up along where I was, and at high school you had one of the sickest beards off the bat. You were a bit, you had the rest of us aspiring to the beard greatness that you produced on your face, and you continue to rock one to this day. It's obviously one of the namesakes of this channel. Why do you love growing a beard, number one? And number two, who's your beard wrestling doppelganger?
Ooh, those are good questions. Yeah. Okay. What was the first question again?
So why do you grow a beard?
Why do I grow a beard? I look better with a beard. I just do. Not everyone looks better with a beard. Most people do.
What are you trying to say?
No, like I'm a beard enthusiast. So most people look better with a beard. Not everyone, but most people. But I definitely look better with a beard. And if you have side-by-side pictures and comparisons, it's not even close. Like beards all the way. Also, since living in Canada, Canada's the only time I've ever been referred to as a man's man before. It's like Darren, you know me. I am in no way really that much of a man's man. Not really, right? But in Canada, apparently I am, just because I have a beard, play rugby, am from New Zealand. I'm a man. I'm a man's man. Thanks, Canada. So I have to play up to that a little bit.
For sure. Yeah. And my second part was, who is your wrestling beard doppelganger?
Okay. So it's trimmed right down because I trimmed it the other day. So it's at about a number 2. So it's at that ugly stubble phase. I feel like it's the stubble of NWO Hulk Hogan.
Yes, without the spray painted coloring over it,
but without the mustache. So probably, you know what? I'm going to go with Rick Rude. I think Rick Rude had this level of beardage.
He did at a point. I remember. Yeah,
Rick Rude, or maybe a very short Chris Benoit.
Don't pull that one out. Well, that's pretty cool. I remember back when you had a bit of a longer beard, you sort of had like the genius kind of beard at one point. You know, it looked like a little bit longer, a little bit cultured. But
had this she thing for a very long time.
Keeping it trim these days. Nice to see. Okay, lastly, do we see a potential tag team reunion or run of Hawaiian Heat in the future?
Well, we'd have to be in the same country at the same time for that to happen. Which rarely happens. So pretty much it's you and me dressed in Hawaiian shirts, getting drunk, walking down the street and looking at fights. I think that's pretty much what that reunion's going to look like.
I think it'll. I think we're going to be asked to be in AEW. I've really got a sixth sense for that.
Just keep your phone on you the next time we're in the same country drinking together, and then you'll see the reunion of Hawaiian Heat.
Yes. Well, that leads into my next segment, actually. It's a mainstay in the WrestleBeards interview. It's our top 3. So I'm going to just pick your brain, and in the interest of a potential Hawaiian Heat reunion, we'd probably be looking for some good opposition to take on, rather than our 2-on-1 handicap with Mark, the referee. If you had to pitch a dream match for Hawaiian Heat, who would be your 3 picks? So we'll start from 3, we'll head back to 1, and we'll alternate who we'd like to take on. So I'll let you kick it off. Who would be your number 3 pick for a wrestle match between Hawaiian Heat and them?
I think we'd have to take on Zion Taumidi and Tana Manu.
Going back to our roots, mate. Oh, that's awesome. They were obviously there at the original event, the Kashmir Wrestling Federation.
Yeah, we're gonna have to replay that this time for real.
Well, my number 3 pick would have to be a real team, which would be Public Enemy. I think they're probably the most like our characters in real life. They're a bit like, they're big dudes. They've got a bit of a rock and roll charm. They're both dead, actually, which we can't really have that match, sadly. But Rocco Rock, match. I think they were Rocco Rock and Johnny Grunge, I think were their names. I think that would be quite a hard case. All right, Cam, what's your second pick for a tag team?
I have to pick my favorite tag team of all time, which I think has to be Legion of Doom, or the Road Warriors in their WCW iteration. It would just be so much fun to get beaten up by them.
Both dead as well, unfortunately.
Are they both dead?
Yeah, one. I think Animal only passed away about a month ago, actually.
Oh.
But definitely, I'd love to see Hawaiian Heat take on the Legion of Doom. That'd be awesome. Well, my number 2 pick would be oh, you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody. The New Age Outlaws. And for the mere factor that obviously my finishing move was the Famouser. So I think we'd probably feud over who has the rights to use the Famouser move, me or Billy Gunn. And
in that matchup, who's the heel and who's the face? I think
we're definitely the heels. You'll be obviously feuding with Road Dogg. I'll be feuding with Billy Gunn. But we'll have some great matches. Okay, your number 1 pick for a tag team we could take on.
Oh, number 1 pick for a tag team we could take on. Oh, geez.
Don't think too hard.
Oh, Donald Trump and Mike Pence.
That'd be nice.
that would be a good fight. Then
about the only wrestling match we'd probably win and have everyone on our side as well.
I don't know, but he's on that super cocktail of anti-COVID drugs. Both of them are. I don't know, man. Plus he's high on cocaine all the time. I think we'd have our hands full.
Well, my number 1 pick, Cam, is another throwback to the Kashmir Federation. We had our 2-on-1 match with Mark, but I'm officially calling out Mark again for a tag team match this time. I'm calling you out, Mark, but I want you to bring along Bundy as your tag team partner. I want to see Hawaiian Heat versus Mark and Bundy. I don't know what your gimmick will be, but I'm sick of you guys. I don't know why.
Hey, wait, are we cutting a promo right now?
I think we are. I think we're cutting a promo.
You listen to me, Mark. You get Bundy, and you meet us anytime, any place. You won't be able to do it.
Wow.
Wait, we never got a catchphrase.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Because if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen.
And we could also steal from Booker T another thing. We're the zero time Kashmir High School Tag Team Champions. I think we can only have this match if Spraden Church set up another ring in Cashmere High School.
Well, Mark still lives in Christchurch. Maybe he's got some contacts. Maybe he can set it up.
Okay, well, that was a great chat today, Cam. It was good to reconnect, buddy, and talk wrestling. Hopefully you'll come back on the show another time. We can have another chat.
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you very much for having me.
I think next time we'll look at some specific moment of the wrestling past, and we can dive into that. Potentially even the dark side of the ring episodes or so forth.
Oh, I've got a ton of background WWE knowledge because I still read a ton of articles on it and stuff. And we could do a whole segment on just how big of pricks wrestlers are backstage. Like, it's amazing. Sure. Yeah.
Okay, Cam. Well, it's been fantastic. I'm looking forward to the Hawaiian Heat reunion, and we'll catch up shortly. So thanks everyone for listening. This has been Shrek for WrestleBeards Worldwide, and we'll catch you next time. Like, share, and subscribe. See you soon.
This was Cam from Hawaiian Heat. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe.